Miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Israel and Hamas have agreed to extend a temporary truce for an additional 2 days on the pause's fourth day and last day. Hamas has freed 31 more women and children during the pause in fighting, and an extension could mean more hostages are released from Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and a halt in fighting. Israel has said it would extend the ceasefire by a day for every 10 additional hostages who are released. CIA Director William Burns arrived in Qatar today for secret meetings with Israel's spy chief and Qatar's prime minister aimed at brokering an expansive deal between Israel and Hamas. Burns is pushing for Hamas and Israel to broaden the focus of their ongoing hostage negotiations, thus far limited to women and children, to encompass the release of men and military personnel too. Now, despite the pause in fighting, Palestinians in Gaza are burning door frames and piles of garbage to cook, sleeping crammed into school classrooms and strangers' homes, and scrambling onto trucks bringing aid from Egypt in a desperate grab for supplies. Residents say 1.7 million people are internally displaced, most of them crammed into the southern half of the Gaza Strip, after Israel demanded that civilians leave the north days after its military offensive began last month. Some say they are starting to lose hope. The Koch network today endorsed Nikki Haley in her bid to push GOP, in her bid to become the next GOP candidate for president. The endorsement from the super PAC established by David and Charles Koch, the political Koch brothers, they're endorsing Nikki Haley in the Republican presidential primary race, giving her much needed organizational muscle and financial health as she battles Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida for second place in Iowa. And Hunter Biden's lawyer said today that he is willing to testify in a public hearing before the House Oversight Committee. A letter from his attorney came in response to a subpoena this month that is seeking a deposition, which would take place behind closed doors. Now, this is a striking escalation in the battle between the president's son and congressional Republicans who have focused on his past business dealings and have launched impeachment hearings aimed at President Biden. Well, Pope Francis is getting gangster. He has evicted, or says he will evict, U.S. Cardinal from his Vatican home. This action is going to be against Cardinal Raymond Burke, and it came after the prelate's increasingly pointed critiques of the reform-minded Pope. Now, the prelate, or the cardinal, is a populist fan of European nationalists, and he's also a fan of former President Donald Trump. He rarely misses an opportunity to criticize the Pope's politics, especially the Pope's welcoming of LGBTQ people and immigration. Cardinal Burke had twice joined other conservative cardinals in issuing a letter to Francis, essentially a list of formal questions that call his vision into question. And Fox News will host a 90-minute debate between Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida and Governor Gavin Newsom, who's not on the ballot for president of California. This is going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern time this Thursday. This unusual event between a Republican presidential candidate and a high-profile Democratic governor who has been a surrogate for the Biden administration will be moderated by Sean Hannity, the conservative primetime host and close ally of Donald Trump. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am joined by two brilliant contributors to help us break down all of this news today. It's Dr. Larry Walker. He's a professor at the University of Central Florida, and Dr. Niambi Carter. She is a professor at the University of Maryland. And in hour two, we'll dig behind some headlines, some stories that have been getting a lot of attention. And this is the story of the African-American female-owned venture capital fund, Fearless. It's called the Fearless Fund. These women created a grant program for Black women where they could apply to get a $20,000 business grant. And the group, the nonprofit American Alliance for Equal Rights, the same conservative group started by Edward Bloom, who filed the challenge to university affirmative action programs, also filed a lawsuit challenging Fearless Fund, saying that their scholarship program, their grant program, $20,000 grant to Black women was discriminatory because it was only for Black women. Well, as you can imagine, Fearless Fund is fighting back, and this is going to be an epic battle because the outcome of this case could determine whether diversity programs across the board in businesses in every industry in this country can continue. And what does that mean for small minority business owners? I'm going to talk to one of the co-founders of the Fearless Fund and a representative from the National Minority Supplier Development Council in hour 2. So make sure you stick around. But before I bring on my guests, I must pay tribute to the late former First Lady, Rosalind Carter. Today, former First Lady Carter was laid to rest at a church on the campus of Emory University in Georgia. And it was a packed house. President Bill Clinton and all 5, including Melania Trump, all 5 living first ladies, former first ladies, attended the ceremony. Now, none of them had a speaking role, but they were there to show their support, their solidarity. This is such a small sorority. And when you think about the number of first ladies who are living, it's really a small group. Rosalind Carter led an incredible life. She was a humanitarian. She was a mental health advocate. She was a mother, a grandmother. She and former President Jimmy Carter, who was able to attend, even though he's very sick himself. He didn't say anything at the funeral, but he was there in a wheelchair. This couple, Rosalind Carter and former President Jimmy Carter, were married 77 years. Yes, 77 years. That is the longest marriage in presidential history. And they have a ginormous family. We don't hear a whole lot about their family, but they had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Most of their sons were adults by the time they went to the White House. But we all remember little Amy Carter running around the White House. Amy now, I think she's about 55, 56 years old. But they have 22 grandchildren between Rosalind and former President Carter. They have great-grandchildren. Just a huge family. And as I was reading all of the wonderful tributes to the former First Lady, this really resonated with me. President Carter, to maintain a close bond with his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, in the mid-1990s, he began a decades-long annual tradition of taking his entire family. Yes, that was Rosalind, the 3 sons, the daughter, their spouses and partners, all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He would take them on a vacation between Christmas and New Year's. He just wanted to make sure his family remained close. There's so many lessons that we can learn from Rosalind Carter, her example that she set, her poise, her grace, the simplicity in which she lived her life. There were lots of opportunities for them to become rich. They decided to forego that for a simple life back in Georgia after they left the White House. And in many ways, they became more popular and more famous after they left Washington because of their humanitarian work. We will always remember First Lady Rosalind Carter. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though?
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus.
We are back, and Dr. Larry Walker is here, as well as Dr. Niambi Carter. I want to start with you, Dr. Carter. What do you think of this big endorsement that Nikki Haley got today?
Well, I mean, I think on one hand, it's exciting, to think about some of this, but I think it might be too little too late. I think Donald Trump has been allowed to sort of coast through this primary cycle and take up a lot of oxygen. I think, Nikki Haley has been hanging in. I think Nikki Haley, in terms of resumes, probably has a little bit more on the ball as she's been an executive. But that would have been important 4 years ago. Now Donald Trump can say, I was the president, despite all of the missteps, the mishaps, and the, I would say, purposeful undermining of that office. So I don't know if this endorsement is going to be enough to push Nikki Haley to the fore. I mean, we've not yet seen this party willing to really stand behind a woman in this way. So I don't know that this is going to be enough. I think it's powerful. I think it's important, but I don't know if it's enough.
Well, we know, Dr. Walker, that there are many, many Republicans who are hoping that Ron DeSantis would be the replacement to Donald Trump. They've been looking for any candidate, and Ron DeSantis pretty much at every turn has just disappointed them. So Dr. Carter raises the question about, how late in the game this endorsement is coming. Iowa caucuses start in about 48 days from today. Now, she doesn't have the kind of ground game that Ron DeSantis has, and allegedly this endorsement is coming with some financial support and will allow her to put in place a ground game. Do you think she can, maybe not best Donald Trump, but maybe, clearly slide into that second place with this kind of big endorsement that might it signal to other big donors that they should jump on board?
I certainly think that, you look at the poll numbers that, finishing second and Ron DeSantis, who's been fading for months, quite frankly, I think it's reasonable that she could finish second. But I think we need to be very clear. I want to remind, paraphrasing a quote that Donald Trump made quite a while ago when he said he can go in the middle of the street and shoot someone and get away with it. I'm repeating that because there is absolutely zero chance that anyone but Donald Trump is going to be the nominee. And I know that obviously in terms of, many of the large networks have to kind of continue this dialogue about, having these debates, and the numbers have dwindled down. We obviously the last couple of weeks with Scott and Pence dropping out. But the reality is we all know who are the two, individuals who are going to be representing the Republican and Democratic parties. I think the thing about Nikki Haley we have to really be clear about is her anti-Black policies and views. And then secondly, her views on when it comes to a woman's choice. So I think those are the two important issues that really have to focus on. And like I said, she's former governor. My colleague, Dr. Carter, highlights she's former governor of South Carolina, was U.S. ambassador. But the reality is her policies are really inconsistent with the majority of individuals from minoritized communities who have similar experiences as she does. But so, like I said, it's, running for second or third place. I guess that works. But in politics, the ultimate cherry on top is being the number one and getting all the spotlight and having the great speech in next August or July, August next year. And so we all know that's going to be Donald Trump.
It's kind of interesting you said that about minoritized populations, because oftentimes we see her holding herself out as a woman of color and as someone that came to this country that knows the pains of being an immigrant and knows the pains of suffering discrimination. She often talks about her past, not in the way that we see someone like Tim Scott, but she has used it. It'll be interesting to see what she does with this, newfound popularity, because there's going to be another debate on December 6th between the GOP candidates. But before that, this Thursday, Ron DeSantis is going to take the stage with Gavin Newsom on Fox with Sean Hannity. I'm just wondering, do you think, Dr. Carter, this is any way like undermining of the vice president to have someone, a governor of such a big state like California? There are a lot of surrogates for the president, but this is a really unusual role for a surrogate. And it really signals to the world, I guess, that he is presidential and kind of, jumps the line in front of our vice president.
I mean, perhaps. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what this yields for either of them, because I don't know that this gets any purchase for either Ron DeSantis or Gavin Newsom. I mean, Gavin Newsom has his own crosses to bear. I don't know that he is presidential in the sense of the numerous allegations that have been his way, some ethical missteps personally, not necessarily with relationship to his office. So I don't know that this makes him more attractive. I think maybe he thinks it does. I don't know what you get as a Gavin Newsom rolling around in the mud with a Ron DeSantis, as my colleague pointed out, Dr. Walker said. I mean, DeSantis has been flagging for quite some time. I mean, we don't even really talk about him as much as we did anymore. He is not the heir apparent. And so I don't know that Gavin Newsom gets anything out of this. I don't know what Ron DeSantis gets out of this. I mean, he is not a contender. He's not in the race. He is not a person you need to be focused on. You need to be thinking about the Nikki Haley's and the Donald Trumps and the other folks who are still in the Republican primary field, yet you're spending time having what is essentially going to be a shouting match / pretend conversation with someone when there are no stakes. So I don't know what we get out of this for either person other than, stroking their own egos, because I can't imagine that Sean Hannity is going to be a fair arbiter. And I certainly don't think that anyone's opinions about either person is going to change over this display, this exhibition to nowhere. I just think it's, a fool's errand, quite frankly.
Well, we do know Dr. Walker and Dr. Carter, politicians don't do anything unless there's something in it for them. And for Gavin Newsom, maybe it's trying to show up some of his moderate bona fides. He's had two really blistering interviews with Sean Hannity where he's gotten good remarks and he held his own, that he admitted to things, like going to a restaurant during COVID and some other things, but that he slammed the Republicans. And if you're running for president from California as a Democrat, you might be seen by the Midwest and other states as too progressive. So might this not be Dr. Walker, his way of speaking to those independents and those Republicans who he probably feels like he needs to woo if he's going to have a chance at president?
Areva, I think this debate, which we've been talking about for a while, right, as they negotiated details they really teased this out for a while. This is like two guys from college who are frat brothers, not Divine Nine, no, to be clear, who are frat brothers getting together. It's been a while, and they were kind of most egotistical guys kind of getting together. They had a couple drinks, and now they're just kind of getting together and say, years ago, I always wanted to figure out if we had this debate about this. I always figure out, I want to know who won, right? So it's like they're reliving, trying to regather, the past, from like 15, 20 years ago. And look, I don't know where, Dr. Carter hit on the notes. I don't really know where this gets either one of them. Listen,
but address my point. Gavin Newsom wants to be president. We know that. We know that for many people, he is way too liberal. So the only reason you'd go on to Fox is if you're trying to talk to a different audience and paint yourself in a different light. There's no other reason. I don't think it's that deep. I think he's pretty transparent.
Yeah, I think the point is a good one. I think also we have the matter with politicians and their ego. Right. So, ideally, no one's vote. No Republican is seriously considering the former governor of California for president. It's not going to happen. And maybe his political consultants, because that's who he's talking to. He's not talking to his staff. He's talking to political consultants who are saying, maybe say to him, hey, listen, this is an opportunity for you to speak to a wider audience. And look, he's a great surrogate. Let me be clear about that. He's excellent at responding to questions as it relates to policy issues related to the Biden administration, okay? And certainly he talks about some of the great things he's done in California. But the reality is he's in my personal opinion, he's not going to be the nominee in 4 years or 8 years. And so, that's deep.
Well, let's put it like this. We know he's going to want to be. Now, whether he ends up being it or not. But I want to go back to my point about Kamala Harris, because there are lots of ways to be a surrogate. And there's now a bunch of articles that are running about this showdown that's going to happen between these two powerful Californians who used to be allies. And I know, you guys are really smart. You get the nuances, but to somebody turning on the television and sees this tall, handsome guy right out of Central Casting who's holding his own on Fox, to someone who's not as enmeshed in politics might see him as, wow, he looks really presidential. I just think we're dismissing him in a way that maybe we're overlooking, again, not how we, and I'm going to put us in the bubble, see it, but think of the 9 to 11 million Fox viewers that tune in that have not seen a guy like Governor Newsom on Fox Network.
I have to agree with Dr. Walker. I don't think the people who watch Fox News will ever go for Gavin Newsom. And it's not taking away from the fact that he is very tall, he is handsome, he speaks well, he is good at these debates, this tete-a-tete. I actually think Ron DeSantis is outmatched in that respect. I just don't see the people who tuned in to Fox News into a candidate like a Gavin Newsom. There's no moderation.
But if you're the vice president, your staff, what is your staff saying? I would imagine the staff is saying, why is this guy doing this debate? You think that the vice president's staff says, oh, that's nothing, just wave it off?
I don't know if you say it's nothing, but there's really not a lot that Kamala Harris can do in her role as vice president. I mean, she has a race coming up that she needs to be focused on. And maybe she'll think about Gavin Newsom in another 4 years. But I do think that Gavin Newsom will not be the guy. I don't care how much he wants it. I just don't see it for him. And I'm not dismissing him. He has had a number of roles in a really important state that is very viable for Democrats and certainly has tendencies to sometimes go a little more conservative, right? But I just think the net positives of a Gavin Newsom, I don't know if they play well nationally. I just don't see him, even though he might be trying to leapfrog a Kamala Harris. She's been in the White House. He has not. He wants to touch it. He has not been able to. And I think that will still rule the day. Now, whether she's able to translate these 8 years into, or potential 8 years, into a presidential bid remains to be seen. But I don't know that Gavin Newsom, even as he is campaigning and trying to make his national profile grow, if he's going to be able to move the needle And certainly she's a little bit hamstrung right now in this position.
Well, clearly none of us know what's going to happen in the next election, the election beyond 2024, but name recognition is everything to a politician. And having your name be a household name, i.e. Donald Trump, where your kids know it, the babies know it, the dogs know it, is invaluable. There's something called unearned media that's happening here. This ain't a paid ad. This is 90 minutes on the most watched cable station in the country and then played over on all of the streaming sites. Gavin Newsom is not the governor of the state of California because he's not an astute politician and strategist. Now, obviously where this gets him long term, we don't know, but short term, some folks would call it a stroke of brilliance because it's platforming him in a way. Can we name any other governors, Democratic governors? Look how much we're talking about him, Dr. Walker. Can the average person name another Democratic governor?
So I think you make some really important points, but let me add this, right? Because we have the election coming up next year and VP Harris and President Biden, right, running against Donald Trump and what other crazy person they find as a Republican for VP. Next year, no one's going to remember this. 4 years from now, and this is why if someone is working on political campaigns, I would advise them not to do this because there's no win in this, in my opinion, long term. Short term, does he get some press the next couple of days, maybe a week? Maybe. But the bottom line is if he was more aligned with someone who's going to actually planning on, seeking the nomination, if President Biden wasn't, obviously going to be the nominee, then I think for me, it's a different conversation.
Wait a minute. You said if he was more aligned, he is the person.
No. What I mean, I'm talking about Newsom from California. If there was an opportunity for him to actually have a run for president and seek the nomination, I think that it would be a different situation.
And I'm saying, I think he's waiting in the wings. He's one of the people that if something happened to Biden and for some reason Biden wasn't able to continue his campaign, I'm almost certain you'd see a Gavin Newsom throw his hat in the ring. So I think he's aligned with himself. He's very ambitious and he's made it clear to everyone, particularly those of us that live in the state of California, that is his aspiration. When we come forward, we'll talk about what's happening with the ceasefire, more hostages released, but the condition of Gaza is still, it's devastating. 1.7 million people have been displaced and folks are burning door frames for heat. When we come forward, more on KBLA Talk 1580.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Niambi Carter and Dr. And starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin. We are back with Dr. Larry Walker and Dr. Niambi Carter. And in hour two, we're going to be talking to one of the co-founders of the Fearless Fund about the lawsuit filed against her venture capital organization by Edward Bloom, a key activist in the successful challenge of affirmative action in college admissions. Does this lawsuit signal that diversity programs in companies large and small are at risk? And are we likely to see a spate of lawsuits challenging even something that's innocuous on its face as a small business grant program? So make sure you stick around for hour two. Dr. Carter, I don't know if you are a Catholic or not, but I got a kick out of reading this article of Pope Francis evicting Cardinal Raymond Burke. Burke has been a thorn in his side since Francis got into the office. But what's really funny to me about this is, Francis is a extremist, and presumably either he's a fan of Donald Trump or Donald Trump is a fan of his. And how religious leaders, despite the religion, right, Protestant, Catholic, are able to align themselves with Donald Trump. And seemingly, it's not for us to say who violates, which commandment or who's broken which commandment, but seemingly Donald Trump has broken a number of the commandments, but yet he finds favor with folks like Cardinal Raymond Burke, or like I said, he's enamored with Raymond Burke. What do you make of Pope Francis saying enough is enough?
Well, I'm not Catholic, but my family is actually, there are a lot of them in Maryland. And I mean, I think this is just one of those things about the church. I mean, the church has not always been on the right side of history. And there are parts of the Catholic Church that are very conservative. Not all of the Catholic Church are conservative. I mean, Jesuits, right, as an order, Sisters of the Holy Family, as an order, have reputations for being on the more progressive side. But this is one thing about papal authority, right? I mean, it is no recourse, right? When folks want to put their enemies out, quite frankly. And, I think this is, people wonder why this is the moment, right? Like, why is this the thing? Because we have seen the church countenance sexual abusers, have seen the church countenance a number of abuses of papal authority and not make a move such as this. And so I do think there is probably significant consternation among some Catholics about why the church is making this move. I think for other Catholics who have moved away from the church and the orthodoxy of the church, this is sort of further confirmation about why the structure of the church is questionable and perhaps even corrupt because of the sort of strength that the Pope has and the inability, really, of lay Catholics to really exert any real pressure on the Pope or others who are immediately underneath him. Because,
but wait a minute, Dr. Carter, I think he is succumbing to pressure from the LGBTQ community, pressure from others that are causing him to embrace what would be considered more liberal policies.
I mean, yes, but he doesn't have to, right? I think that's the thing. So this clearly has to be something in him, I think, because I think a number of Catholics Catholic priests are immune. I mean, the Pope is immune to a lot of this. I mean, the authority comes from the top down, not from the bottom up. I think partly some recent happenings have made the Catholic Church kind of reevaluate its relationship to papal authority. But in terms of structure, it is a very sort of top-down institution, and it is a conservative one. And I think, folks like my father, who has been confirmed and is a Catholic by birth and through most of his life, left because of this frustration with the sense that the church is not speaking to its needs. So I do think the church has been urged, but they don't always have to do these things. And again, these many claims that we see, not just around sexual abuse, but abuse more generally, is because this church has largely been insulated from this kind of critique.
Well, as a lifelong Catholic, I mean, the Catholic Church is not immune to what every other business has to deal with, and that's the bottom line. The Catholic Church has been decimated financially. The lawsuits you're making reference to with respect to, the abuse cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. They've had to sell off properties, schools, and I think the push by this Pope, one, I agree with you, must be something in him internally, but I also think he understands that if the church wants to survive and have any relevancy in this era, it's got to change its ways. And survive also means having a congregation, butts in pews, money in offering plates, because the church is, you look around any community, Catholic schools have been closed, parishes have been closed. So they've suffered tremendously, one, because they have been slow to respond to very clear abuses of their priests, and two, because they've been slow to respond to an ever-evolving congregation that is demanding a church that reflects more of what, particularly in the U.S., what people look like and what their lifestyles are. Professor Walker, Catholic, Protestant, where are you in this debate?
So I'm AME, but my wife was raised Catholic, and I spent most of my, pre-K through 12 experience in parochial school in Catholic schools in Philadelphia. And so it's interesting. Some of the things you highlighted is a note that the Archdiocese in Baltimore had to file for bankruptcy just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And so there are also other archdioceses who are facing similar challenges because of decades of ignoring child sexual abuse. So, it's interesting in terms of a discussion about the Pope and the steps he's taken. I think one of the things we have to note about when you ascend to become Pope is that it is very much a political process. So a lot of times when we think about religion, we don't think about politics. But like I said, you have to, in order to get Pope, you have to get elected, right? So it is very much a political process. But the Catholic Church is at a very challenging time right now. We highlighted the decades of ignoring child sexual abuse and the financial challenges. And yes, we also have to note that, that religion throughout world history has been utilized to, in terms of harm minoritized groups, particularly Black folks. So, right. So there are many times people have used the story of Ham to say they were talking about Black folks, and that's the reason why Black people suffer the way they are. But I think that the steps the Pope has taken is really important and probably in many respects long overdue. You highlighted, this cardinal who for a long time has made what are described as troubling, comments. And listen, anyone who aligns himself with Donald Trump, someone who's been indicted dozens of times, who's lied, if you're a religious leader, he's cheated on multiple wives. I mean, we could just keep going. He lies constantly. We could keep going on and on and on. Those don't align with any religious tenets, but it does align with white supremacy. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, we can't ever forget about the intersectionality of religious organizations and white supremacy. Yeah, Donald Trump would have had his mouth washed out with soap so many times.
Or he would have got paddled if it was back in the day.
Paddled, all of the above. All right, got to talk about this war. Biden is still getting beat up on internally, externally. He's freeing hostages, but people are saying it's not enough. When we come forward, we want to talk about where does the president go from here? And is the ceasefire likely to result in the end of the Israeli-Hamas crisis? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580. And we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Keep following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station. KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nikki Carter and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated.
All right, Dr. Walker, it looks like over 100 hostages have been freed by Hamas, all of them women and children. But CIA Director William Burns is in Qatar today saying he wants to broaden the focus of the hostage negotiations to include men as well as military personnel. And we also know that the Biden administration would like for this truce to continue. Where does the president go from here? He's been so instrumental in the negotiation of the release of these hostages. He's gotten some, I'll say, positive press for that, but it's still being overshadowed by the folks who are calling on this truce to be an extended truce and to end the military, apparatus, the military incursion that we see happening in Gaza.
Yeah, the president, he has been getting a lot of criticism, and particularly, I think last week, a lot of us saw some of the poll numbers in terms of the generational gap between how, individuals who are, 35 and under and those above 35 view the conflict in Israel. But the president, in any case, is always behind the scenes, not just the president, but also the VP, but particularly the Secretary of State, and negotiating along with other foreign entities to kind of find some common ground on this issue. But the bottom line is, Areva, is that this is not going to be solved overnight. This problem wasn't created overnight, and it will not be solved overnight. I think the challenge with today's society is that, not just Americans, but, well, particularly Americans, let me be clear. Americans are used to want to be situations like this to be solved overnight because they see things on television, they watch the documentary, and they're on social media, and someone who has no foreign affairs experience is telling them this is a fixable issue. And look, I think I've said on your show previously, when I worked on the Hill, I worked on issues relating to Israel. And these issues are very complicated, and it takes months, years sometimes to really kind of negotiate the kind of language that you want. So this is a organic process. This is, they've tipped a little bit of the iceberg. They will continue to make progress over the next couple of weeks and months. But I think it's really important for your listeners to understand that this is going to take a long time, and that you're going to continue to see on both sides individuals lose their life. Both sides accuse each other of doing things that they may or may not be doing. But it's a very complicated situation, and I implore Americans to really wait this out.
No, that's a really good point. And as we waited out those images, Dr. Carter, of the Gaza people crammed into classrooms, staying at strangers' homes, burning wood, piles of garbage to cook. I mean, just trying to survive. Some of the pictures of the devastation and the rubble, you wonder, decades to try to rebuild that region. They were told to, many of the people were told to leave their homes and to travel to southern Gaza, thought that they would be safe there. And it doesn't appear that there's any place that they're safe. Mm-hmm. How do you think those images continue to just pull at our heartstrings?
Well, look, I don't know that anybody can see any of those images and be okay. whether the attack on Israel and the Israeli citizens or what is happening in Gaza with the Palestinians, particularly children who've been harmed or killed. I do think this is going to be a decades-long process towards healing and rebuilding. The physical infrastructure is the easy part. It's the human infrastructure that's going to be the hard thing. I mean, there are undoubtedly going to be psychological wounds that exist long beyond this day as people have lost family members and connection and community. I mean, there are probably going to be folks who lived in Gaza, Palestinians who don't return, who don't come back, people who flee Israel and don't come back because of fears, and I think legitimate ones, about their safety and about their ability to coexist in this space. So I think what is going to happen after this day, we have no idea. I think it's a moving target. It's going to be a daily negotiation, and where we go from here remains to be seen. I think as the language from both Hamas and the Israeli state, not the citizens, right? Not Israeli citizens, not Palestinian citizens, right? Palestinian people, excuse me, because they are effectively non-citizens, has ramped up and become more nationalistic and more exclusionary. It becomes harder for these two sides to get to something that looks like a workable, long-standing peace. But I do think, at least for now, we do see some encouraging signs, and I think that's the best we can hope for. But there is going to be a lot of pain in the meantime as people try to survive a war zone.
Yeah, and one of the issues is, what is the governing structure in Gaza going to look like, Professor Walker, when this is all over? Because the U.S. has made it very clear that they did not condone or endorse the preoccupation of the Gaza Strip by the Israelis. And we know from the Israeli standpoint, Hamas, which is now part of that governing body, cannot have anything to do with the governing of that region. And there are problems with the Palestinian, Authority. So, what does that look like?
I think what you will see is a new governing body as it relates to the Palestinians. Anytime you have these kinds of, you had this kind of conflict, you mentioned briefly the PLO, the PLO, which for many years held power, and now Hamas. But like I said, I think you will find is a new generation of Palestinian leaders will take the helm, so to speak, and you will see a new entity that leads the Palestinians in trying to, not only in terms of when it comes to my colleague Dr. Carter about the infrastructure, but the trauma. The other challenge of this is, and I think this is something that we really need to think about long term, is that those Palestinian children who've been traumatized and lost family members, how do you reconcile what they've had to deal with, and then ask and at the same time say we need to have long-term peace? The best option may be what South Africa did in terms of reconciliation, but that's going to take a lot of work. There are a lot of children who have been traumatized and lost family and friends, and they're going to be angry and traumatized, and you're going to have to figure out how do you address that, because if you don't, it will grow, and then we will be having the same conversation years from now.
Yeah, there's some experts that say Israel is just grooming the next generation of Hamas terrorists. Those 12, 13, 14-year-olds who are watching their entire families be wiped out are just, going to become 16, 17, 18-year-old terrorists. That's a real possibility, Dr. Carter.
I mean, certainly. I mean, when we look at what leads people into that space of radicalism, I mean, it's lack of employment opportunities, lack of belonging or sense that you belong. I mean, and the fact that people are kept away from citizenship and these sort of formal levers where they can express their discontent. There has to be a release valve for some of this and this energy. And that's why, I'm so glad Dr. Walker brought up truth and reconciliation, because that's a form of reparation. Right? We don't talk about reparation in this way, but that's a panoply of things. It's about repairing. And so while the South Africans didn't necessarily come with all of the things that people wanted, like land reclamation and all of these other things, being able to say what the grievance is and being able to grieve that publicly and have the state acknowledge formally that this wrong has occurred. I don't know that we are there yet in Israel, but I do think some process whereby you talk about trying to bridge this gap. We may never fully agree on how we got here, but if we don't do anything, this is bound to happen again. And we will just be calling Hamas something else in another 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And when we think about youth unemployment, when we think about undereducation, when we think about lack of infrastructure, when we think about the inability to move freely, all of these things are not unique to this region. It's anywhere in the world where we have seen people be oppressed and excluded. And you can almost predict what the outcome will be. It may not be another terror attack, but it will certainly be something that looks like unrest, whatever that is. And being more draconian is only going to keep the lid on for a little while. That is not a long-term solution. And we've seen it work nowhere in the world where we've tried it. It didn't work in the United States. It didn't work in South Africa. It doesn't work anywhere in the world. Not for long.
Really well said, Dr. Carter. Thank you. We are out of time. Thank you so much to both of you for your insights, for your brilliance, for helping us make sense. As you said, these are very complex issues, not going away anytime soon. We've got to be patient. We've got to be long-suffering. And we've got to give Joe Biden benefit of the doubt, because we know it takes a level of skill on acumen to thread this needle. Probably there's no one else in the country better suited to do this than he does, than him. And even with his decades of experience, is still hard. Stay with us when we come forward talking about affirmative action in colleges. Could it spill over to the workplace? KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities and sports figures, elected leaders and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight.